All right, what's going on, everybody? It's Cobra Kai season 4. So this is the spoiler review. And by the way, if you're brand new to the channel, subscribe to it, will you? Hit that subscribe button. Then you can hit the notification button if you're already subscribed. All of that. We're getting into it. Come on. I've been waiting for this. I shot my non-spoiler. It's been up for a couple of days now, and I've been waiting for people to watch this series. And I wanted to get into it. I wanted to talk about it with you guys. And you might have not had a chance to binge it all the way through, so you didn't watch this yet. Or obviously you did, and maybe it's a couple days later after I uploaded the frickin' thing. Who cares? The problem is there is no problem because you're watching it now. And that's the thing. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about Cobra Kai Season 4. If you saw my non-spoiler review, I love this season. I'll tell you that, and I referenced something that I didn't like. And again, this is spoilers, so I'm going to spoil stuff. You got it? Great. If not, get lost. So there's a training sequence that I didn't like, and it's when Sam jumps off the roof. I told you I'm going to jump into the stuff I didn't like, which is very little. Her jumping off the roof to me, and that whole scene, you don't see him bouncing off mattresses, and other kids aren't going to be able to do that. And it's like, I know you got to suspend disbelief through this show now, and I've done that, and I'm happy to do it because I love it so much. But that's one I think they could have done a different training thing of not, or the leap could have been shorter because I didn't really buy the leap. Other than that, whatever. Let's talk about Terry Silver, man. What a way to introduce him, and I laughed out loud when because in the third movie, and I'm so glad I can talk about this now with no spoilers, with spoilers, but in the third movie, he's so. And I loved him, but he's like a Steven Seagal ripoff, right? But he's just a total like out of his mind cartoon character almost in the third film. And they reference it. They talk about when Kreese goes and goes to recruit him, and he's like a hippie now, and he's with a bunch of he just seems sedated. He's got his long hair, doesn't have the ponytail, and he's not the Terry Silver that we remember. And he's like, I was coked out of my mind, man. What are you talking about? And then they flash back to the third movie. The cuts to the flashbacks to the original movies in the entire series, season 4, is phenomenal. The way that they use it, certain cutbacks, and there's one particular scene. I'll jump back to Terry Silver in a moment, but I want to make sure that I don't forget these things. Like there's stuff with Daniel and Johnny going on throughout the duration of this series, but in this season in particular, when they're trying to coexist. And then there's one point when they're training to fight each other again, which what a scene that we'll talk about in a moment. But holy shit, that scene. But as they're both training and looking at each their points of view, they used footage that was never in the original movie. That was a deleted scene when Johnny keeps picking on Daniel and it has him in the lunchroom, and he from his point of view, it looks like Daniel is picking on him, but in Daniel's point of view, Johnny was picking on him. So they show all that stuff, but they use footage from the old movies that they never even used before. And I love that they go into the library. But to jump back to Terry Silver, they talk about what he was like, and he even said it. He goes, I lost my mind for like a high school karate tournament. Like, what am I doing? Why was I doing that? I'm not, dude. Get out of here. Kreese is like, yeah, I get it. I owe you my life. Okay, fine. And I'm not doing it. See you later. I'm turning you down. And Kreese is like, all right, because and the whole scene with the two of them, because they played back into the third season of how you see how John Kreese saved Terry Silver's life, and I think there was kind of references to that in the third movie of how he's always been indebted to Kreese, but you see it, and they play it in the third movie. In the third season. And so by the time and Kreese just keeps playing on that and telling him, you got to come back now. I got Cobra Kai and I need you. Get back here. And Kreese knows what he's doing. He's planting the seed, and he knows that once he does it, once he opens up Pandora's box, though, does he want to go down that road? Because he thinks he can control Terry Silver. And we ultimately find out he cannot. Terry Silver has become the most devastating villain in Karate Kid lore ever after this season for what he has done. Because he's got money, he's got a vendetta, and he's got a drinking problem. So there's a lot going on with him, and he is maniacal. If you've seen the third one, he is maniacal. And so they bring in Paul Walter Hauser comes back. Paul Walter Hauser, movie trivia SCHMOEDOWN competitor. But Paul Walter Hauser comes in and as Stingray, because we didn't see him last season. And he comes back in and he's trying to belong. And when he's coming back, and I think they mentioned that he was coming after like probation, but it's pretty much for him being in the fight, the high school fight. But he comes back, he's living at his sister's house. He gets into an argument with his neighbor, who guy from Wolf of Wall Street. And he's trying to fit in, Paul Walter Hauser, Stingray. And he's just trying to get back to Cobra Kai, and he doesn't know what's going on. Like the landscape has changed so much. So by the time he goes back and he finally, he has this party and then he kicks the hell out of his neighbor, and he's still got that Cobra Kai thing in him, and he's like, and Kreese kicks him out of the dojo at one point, and he doesn't know what he's doing. So he goes back. He's like, all right, I'm letting you know I got the spirit back. After he kicks the shit out of his neighbor, he's like, I got the spirit back, and he runs into Silver, who at this point is disheveled and pissed off because of the relationship he's got with Kreese, which is the overall through line of these two characters. The Sith rule of two, which we have to talk about, but this whole setup that he comes in, he beats the snot out of Stingray, and you're like, okay, well, how is this gonna wind up? And he uses his money, he uses his influence, he's had a plan all along, and he takes down Kreese with this plan to take over Cobra Kai overall. And it's where, and I had been saying this for so long, after you look at season 3, and at the end of season 3, what happens? There's this whole scene where Robbie comes in, and he's essentially Anakin, and he comes in, and there's the Emperor, who's Kreese, and you have in my non-spoiler, I think I said Anakin and Vader at the same time, which is essentially the same, which is kind of, I stand by it, where you look at where Vader was Johnny, and he went back to the light side, and now you get young Anakin, who is Robbie. So it's like that whole thing of this dynamic of Star Wars of going to the Emperor and going to the dark side, and that feeling that you had, and then they continue it on, and they call reference to it. I've been talking about how Star Wars does it's been this influence for a long time, that and wrestling and 80s movies. It's this entire show, and they mention it. They even talk about how Robbie was really good when he was on the light side, but now since he went to the dark side, he's even that much more powerful. And they're playing right into it, and they're talking about it, they're acknowledging it, which I love even more so. But speaking of the Star Wars and the rule of two, these are two Sith Lords with Terry Silver and John Kreese. And Silver was, I don't want to say he was a good guy, because he was sitting in a cave, just kind of not acknowledging the Force, if you will. And then here's this evil Sith Lord who pulls him out and says, all right, but what happens? One that has the power, one that craves the power. And that's what Silver's doing. And Kreese just keeps on hammering him about, you got to listen to me, throwing Vietnam in his face, and just hammering down that hate. And the hate keeps building up. And then and Silver tries to go, well, watch this. Watch what I do. And he sets up Johnny, beats the shit out of him, and Kreese's like, I don't want to beat up Johnny Lawrence. Johnny Lawrence is like his son, his figure. We see Kreese in season 3. He was a good guy until, again, went down the dark side, went down the dark path, got put into positions where he was ultimately forced to become this Sith Lord. And we find out that even, this is what I like about this show, they give redemption angles to, from everybody from Johnny Lawrence to Hawk to all these different people, and even Kreese, and you buy it. Because Kreese is standing there, he has that opportunity where he's standing on the ring, and he has it, and Terry Silver tells Tori, elbow her in the face again, hit her again, do it. This guy's not going to call he's not going to call it. Elbow her in the face. We know why now. He said that, but it's like, elbow her in the face again. He's like, no. Kreese says, no, do it your way. And that right then, Silver sees the weaknesses, and he knows, and he knows that the dark side is not 100%. And if he sees that and you see that weakness, you got to exploit it, and that's exactly what he did. So Terry Silver is a phenomenal villain, and it's such a great setup to season 5. Every season, it seems like Cobra Kai is getting new leadership and becoming stronger and stronger and stronger with the leadership. It's the Empire. So next season, will Mike Barnes become an instructor for Terry Silver? Who's going to be there? Will Tori still want to be there because Robbie's taken off? Love the angle with Robbie, by the way, because Robbie could have continued to go down that, because the way that they set it up in the end of season 3 is that he's going to be this big bad kind of Anakin going into Vader style. But throughout this entire series, he does do things, and he still has, and he channels into his anger, and he says as much with his dad. He's like, I just was so mad at you and so mad at Daniel LaRusso and Miguel that I was so angry that I wanted to use Cobra Kai to channel all that power, and it just made it worse. And you see that throughout this season. You still see there is still good in him. You see all that, right? But he channels the anger throughout this entire series until finally at the end. And I love this scene. This kid, Kenny. I wasn't sure I was going to feel about this angle at first, because this was, the reverse of the fact that now it is a LaRusso who is indeed bullying. And this kid's spoiled, and they put the responsibility on the parents, which I love, that his kid's glued to the screen. And this great movie with my buddy Brett Ernst, by the way, who they have this whole moment with his sister being the one who's able to kind of analyze that it is indeed the parents who are not, maybe putting enough attention into the kid. And it ultimately, this kid starts bullying, LaRusso starts bullying a Cobra Kai kid. And the kid joins Cobra Kai because LaRusso is bullying him. And it was a nice throwback and kind of ironic to the events of the first Karate Kid. But this whole thing with Kenny, and I thought that this kid who played Kenny did a great job, where there's just kind of innocent, you feel bad for him. He's just a dorky little kid. And it's almost the angle where Daniel LaRusso almost went in season 3, when Terry Silver was training him to go to the dark side. That's what happens to this kid. And this kid beats the snot out of the LaRusso kid after the LaRusso kid decides, I was being a dick. I got to apologize to this kid. And there's this Kenny kid goes full dark side, Cobra Kai, and Robbie sees it. And Robbie's like, wow. And he says to his dad, he's like, I was looking into a mirror. And I didn't like it. And there's this, and we finally get the redemption angle between Johnny and Robbie. So we know Johnny and Robbie are going to be, they're going to form an alliance, or they're going to reconcile, and they're going to work together, which is great, because there's another fantastic. There's so much character development in this season. It's one of my favorite seasons so far because of all the character development and what they did with Johnny and Miguel's mom, but also where Miguel is starting to feel this thing like, why is Johnny putting so much into me, right? Like, why is he giving me, like, what's he trying to do here? And Robbie tells him and starts to get into his head. He's like, the only reason why is because of me. And there's that scene where Johnny's drunk after Kreese after Silver beats the shit out of him, and Jolo Manduena does such a great job in this scene where he says, I love you. And he's like, I love you too, Rob. And it just breaks his heart. And he's like, and that just sets him down this path where he says in a tournament, he's like, he tells Sam, he's like, I wasn't fighting for me anymore. And he starts going through this thing, and he ultimately goes to go look for his dad. So there's all this stuff that's happened between Johnny and Miguel, and then Johnny's still trying to figure out with Robbie and the relationship with Miguel's mom. And the comedy is there throughout the entire time. So Johnny's comedy, like a great line at the very end when he's just, she's like, oh, someone said that Miguel got into an Uber. He goes, what's an Uber? So all that stuff is there, and there's a lot of depth between them. And Tori is another one. She gets a lot to do in this. Tori and Sam both got a lot to do because, as we mentioned, both the LaRusso kids kind of become bullies, and Sam starts to dabble in the dark side, but she dabbles in it in a different way, where she wants to learn the Eagle Fang style and the strike first and all of that, but she goes about it at first the wrong way, and Tori's trying to reconcile, and she's trying to get her life back, she's trying to get jobs, and there's that moment that starts out with Daniel LaRusso's wife, who at first is just like, okay, I'm going to tell this monster psycho stay away from my daughter, and then she starts to have sympathy for her and talk about angles and character development. We find out because she was similar. She had a similar kind of thing happen with her dad. when there was like an affair going on and all that stuff. There's so much detail in the characters of why they act the way that they do throughout the entire season, series. Hawk, another one. And I mentioned in my non-spoiler review, I was never really a massive Hawk fan. I thought he was a little over the top, and he's just kind of, I don't know. He was, and I always mention that this show is very wrestling to me. There are heel turns, there are babyface turns, and sometimes when a babyface turns heel, they work better. And for people who aren't know what the hell I'm talking about, not wrestling fans, like if you turn a good guy into a bad guy, you're like, oh, you know what? Like when The Rock, Dwayne Johnson was a good guy, turned him into a bad guy, and he just had a much better career because of it. And then there are other people who are bad guys that turn good guys, had a much better career. So Hawk, to me, what started out as a good guy nerd that became a heel, became a bad guy. And a lot of people kind of liked him, thought he was cool. Wasn't really my thing. I thought he works much better as a babyface. And that's also because of all the shit that he's done as a bad guy. I acknowledge that. But he has this run here where he gets his hawk cut off, and he thinks he loses his person, his essence, and he doesn't. And he starts to get Eli back, and he starts to become who he was in the beginning of the show, but stronger now because of what he does on the light side. And if you look at not in wrestling terms, but again in Star Wars terms, he goes and becomes a Jedi. He's no longer a Sith. He's no longer dabbling in the dark side, and it pays off. He doesn't have to fight Miguel, because that's a good scene too, how you thought Miguel's back injury was going to come back, and they did this psych out move where you think it's like, oh, Miguel's going to fight, but he doesn't. He doesn't come back. He doesn't fight. He ultimately doesn't do it. And and I didn't know in the tournament how they were going to do it, because I liked the addition of what they were able to do with the girls. And they said, okay, there's going to be a girl champion, there's going to be a guy champion, there's going to also be some more. Because the whole thing with, we can't have guys beating up the girls, and we can't do this. Look at this scene. That's going to look bad. So there was so much that they did in this particular season that I think answered a lot of questions, put some things together. It was creative the way that they did it. But yeah, those were the things that really stood out to me. And the fight with Daniel and Johnny. You get to see them square off again, and they flash back. There's so many different times that they flash back to old scenes and this nostalgia thing, the way that they do it. They do nostalgia really well. There's been a lot of nostalgia that's been going on in general with movies, and whether it's Spider-Man or Matrix or any of these movies that are playing with nostalgia. And you can argue to death which ones you think do them right, which ones you think do them wrong, but I think Cobra Kai does it very well. And they play into these particular movies, and you don't have to be Karate Kid diehards to really appreciate it. You know, it's probably going to make you go back and want to watch the movies. But I think that, like, perfect example is my daughter. She's 10, and she was watching some of this with me. She hadn't seen the series yet, and I wasn't sure if she was ready for it, but she definitely is. As she was watching, she was getting into it, and she'd seen Karate Kid once. She'd seen the first movie, but she's like, do I have to watch 2 and 3? And I was like, you'll appreciate it more for sure, but I don't think you'll be lost. I think you could watch Cobra Kai season 1 through 4, watch it, and really start to become fans of the series through the characters. But I do think you get more of appreciation from watching the original 3 movies. There's no doubt about it. But the stuff with Kreese and Terry Silver and how that all plays out, and the angle with Terry Silver, the angle with Kreese, the idea of the idea of how Kreese brought this upon himself. Terry Silver was out of it. He was not going to be in this at all, and Kreese opened it up and brought this monster back, and he's exactly what happened to him. Like, he's just left his life, and he's going to open up dojos all over the place now. When you see him, Thomasine Griffith does such a great job in this show, by the way. He is so good in this role, because when you see him, he just looks like a kind of broken down old man. But when it ends, he's the Terry Silver from Karate Kid 3. The ponytail, the kind of the stone cold look, everything about it. And there's a great scene when he goes to the dojo and he's another one. He's another one. If you want to go in that whole angle of the light side, dark side, he's kind of on I'm not saying the light side, but he's not fully embraced the dark again. Because even when he goes to talk to Daniel, he's still trying to kind of actually talk to him. And then he's just so far gone by the time you get to the end of it. I covered the stuff with Kenny and the LaRusso kid, which there was, some of that, as I mentioned in the beginning, the two things that I thought were just, it could have done, not necessarily done without, but it wasn't my favorite part, was the roof jumping. And then I thought that the kids' friends were a little over the top too, and were really overly bullyish, but whatever. Again, didn't take me out of it. Loved this season. I really loved this season. Thought it was so great. The tone of it, I thought the way that they were able to infuse, if you really look at it, as I mentioned, because they keep, and I think there's a great reference to the late great Roddy Piper inside of this. Anyway, I loved it, man. I absolutely loved it. I hope you guys loved it too. Yeah, I'm leaving this on there for a little bit. I can't wait to see season 5. Is Mike Barnes going to come back? I don't know who's going to come back. Is Hilary Swank going to come back? That's always going to be the questions. Is Allie going to come back? What's going to happen with? I can't. People mention Chosen. Sorry. Of course I'm going to mention Chosen. The end scene. Daniel is at the grave. He's talking to Mr. Miyagi, and then he's like, I can't honor these guys. I can't break that, because the fight, the fights in general, you have where Hawk beats Robbie, which ultimately sends Robbie back into his father, well, not just father's arms, but goes back and sees the stuff that happened with Kenny and all of that. But then there's the fight, the Tori fight, and that fight with Tori and Sam in that finals there, when we find out that the judge has been bribed, and that ultimately turns Tori going, wait, what the hell's going on here? But then after that all goes down, then Miyagi and Eaglefang are supposed to disband, and the fact that Johnny and Daniel worked together in the final fight was awesome. But you get to that ending, and then Chosen says, yeah, I'm coming in, I'm going to help you out. So now it's going to be Chosen and Daniel are going to be working together, because we know Chosen can get dark. So I don't want to see Chosen make a heel turn, though. I want to keep him babyface. But I'm digging it, man. The lure's great. They're having so much fun. You can tell they're having so much fun. What a great show. What a fun show. It's just like everything's so dark on TV, and that's fine. There's a lot of fun, dark stuff out there, but this is just a fun show, and I'm happy it's on. So anyway, that's my spoiler review of season 4. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the show in general. Once again, please subscribe to this channel. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button. Hit the notification button. I'm gonna do some more stuff on it. Whether I'm probably gonna have the guys on the show, with it's John, Hayden, and Josh talking, and I'll try to get Sholo back on. I had some great interviews with him before. And I'd love to talk to them again about this season. It was great. It really was. I have to go back and watch it, but this is up there for me for one of my favorite seasons. And Terry Silver, lunatic. I love it. All right, everybody. Thanks again. I appreciate you, and we'll catch you soon. Cobra Kai Season 4. Peace.